Hi, this is Anthony from Evotech Pacific, and in today's video we're going to look at the Jewel3D software, the latest version of that, which happens to be this particular version here, 2022-09-20, which happens to be the day that it was released. So in order to install this software, what we're going to do is double click on the folder, and I will upload this particular folder into a Dropbox, and I will provide a link in the comments below. But once we've opened up our folder, you can see here we've got a setup file. So first of all, we're going to run this. So just double click on the setup file. That's an application file. It'll tell you that you require a PC, Windows 7 and higher, and NVIDIA as the main GPU. Select your language that you want to go for, so English is fine for me, and then we're going to hit confirm. Now what that will do is it'll start the installation process, and you will be able to run through this. It'll start installing on automatically on your computer. I want to modify this file because I had an earlier version of this, which some of you may have, may not, but I had an earlier version, so I'm just going to click on modify there and go to next. Click on next again for the UIC device, and it will modify that ICD or IC device, and go from there. Once that's finished, we can simply hit finish and install completed. So you've got that message there. The next thing we need to do is we need to install the driver. So I go to the executable folder, double click on that, and you'll see here we've got our driver setup x64. So we're going to double click on that one there, and that will install our driver for us. I'm not 100% sure if the driver is automatically installed when you do the previous installation, but I like to do it just in case, because I've had a couple of instances there where I've installed the software and it hasn't been able to find the driver. So just do this process just to make sure that everything is all good, and we can finish that. Once we're done with that, then we can switch on the Evo3D scanner and we can hook it up to our computer. Okay, so once you have plugged in your machine and switched it on and connected it up to your computer, we need to now run the Jewel3D software, which a little icon will appear on your desktop, and we're going to double click on that. Now the very first thing that it will probably ask you to do will be to calibrate the machine. It's always a good idea to recalibrate the machine in any case after a software update. And what we'll do is we'll place our calibration piece into the scanner itself. Just make sure it clicks into place magnetically. We're using the CB5, which is the jewelry calibration piece, and we're going to click on the confirm button there. The new software says to please fix the calibration plate and adjust the lightness. So we're going to adjust the lightness here. You know, if it's red, that's no good. So yeah, something like that is pretty good. Once we do that, we can hit the tick and it will begin the calibration process. Alright, so now that that calibration is done, we can see here that our accuracy is 0.0032 millimeters, extreme value 53. I'm going to click the tick there, and now we are ready for our first scan. Now once you finish your calibration, you can load up your model, no matter what that is. If it is a reflective piece, like maybe a gemstone, or if it's a ring, a piece of jewelry, something that's shiny, you're going to want to make sure that you coat it with some scanning spray. I personally use the A-Sub Blue scanning spray, and you can normally get that pretty much from most really good 3D printing stores and things. But once you have determined what you're going to scan, you place that onto your scanner to make sure that it locks in using the magnets there. And we're going to go through the Jewel3D version 2 software. So right up top here, it tells you what you're using. You've got your new project there, which we'll look at in just a moment. We have our load, so if you've already done a scan and you wanted to maybe add to that, you can load in a scan that you've previously saved. We have our path option, which is this is where it's going to, or your scan will save to. So when we click on that there, you can determine where on your computer you want that scan to go. So you would create a folder, and say for example if you wanted to go onto the desktop there, then you would select the folder that you want to use. Or we have our calibration icon here, our settings as well. So when we click on that, it brings up a few options that you can play around and change. You've got your language here, your path. Again, you can change the default to where that they get saved. Texture, whether you want texture on or not, the default that comes out is no, so I'm going to leave that is where it is. The trim plane before the scan, I always think that's a really good idea to leave that on. I haven't really seen a lot of 3D scanning software that has this feature. I think it's really cool, so I leave that on. And the default plane value, so how high that particular plane sits. So mine's at -12. You can change that up or down as you see fit. I'm going to leave the default as there. The scale, this is pretty important. I wouldn't change this. Whenever, the way I look at it, if you're wanting to scan something, you want it at 1:1 scale. You don't want it anything different than that, particularly if you're going to be creating a fitted wedding ring or something like that around it, so I'd leave that at 1. Your file type, you can save it as an OBJ or an ASC file if you wish. The default that it's saved as is an STL obviously, so I'm not going to worry about changing either of those. Update file in remesh, yes, we definitely want that to happen because we want to make sure that when we've remeshed the file, it updates the file that is saved. Mouse control, you can change from the default to ExoCAD. If you're familiar with ExoCAD, you can use that instead. I am not, so I'm going to leave default on. Your light theme as classic or spherical. I've never used spherical before. I'm not going to start, so I'm happy with classic. And you can also change the color of the scan. So the outside color is going to be this kind of grayish kind of color, and you can the inside of the model will be this black color. You can change that to whichever color you want by clicking on these little paint tin icons here, and you know, play around with that if you wish. And we can just hit confirm once we're done there, so I'm just going to cancel that. We have next door to that, we have our help. When we click on that, it just tells you which version you're currently running. So I guess if tech support wanted to know which version you're using, then that's what you would quote back to them. And of course we have our minimize, our maximize, and our closing icons there as well. So we're going to go to our new project here. We're going to give this one a name. I'm going to call it Alfred. And the item number, I'm just going to call this one number 1. I only want to scan one item. I'm not doing an inlay or anything like that. I'm not scanning multiple items. I'm only doing one item, and I want a fine scan. I don't want a fast scan. The dictionary here, this is where the file will save to by default, and as I said, you can change that by going into your settings up here and changing that. If you want your exposure gain as well, at the moment we can see down in our little camera corner here that we can adjust, you know, our exposure. Once you start seeing red, you want to kind of dial it back. You definitely don't want to do a scan that's like that, because you're just not going to capture all that much, or you won't. The scan won't be as good, so we kind of want to dial that down so we've got very minimum red on the actual piece itself. Once we're happy with that, we're going to click on the green, oh sorry, not the green tick, but just the start scan there. And here is where we're going to align or determine the height of our plane here. So you can see here we've got a practice scan here. We can adjust that plane a little bit higher or lower. Lower, you can see the actual plate and the blue tack that I've got this piece secured with, so I kind of want to bring that up. Definitely don't want to get any of the plane. Something like that's not too bad, because I can always you know, delete any of the excess. But if you don't want to do any of that, then take it right up and you won't capture any of that blue tack there. And we can always, you know, turn this around and capture the bottom side anyway. So once I'm happy with all of that there, I'm going to start my scan by clicking on save there, and the Jewel3D software will start running the scanner to begin the scanning process. So you can see that you know, we've got the top of the head here. And another question I get asked quite often is, how do you rotate this? The best way to rotate is to hold down your center mouse button, and you can just rotate it around that way. Zooming in and zooming out with your center mouse button as well. And we can see here that that little bit there we're going to have to get rid of, which is not a big deal. Okay, and now it's just about finished registering there, so once that's done we can go through and just check what we've got there. I'm going to get rid of that little piece there. Just by dragging my mouse with my left mouse button and just highlighting it and just hitting the bin icon that deletes those selections there. At the moment the normal selection, which is what I've got as comes out as default, but you can select to a polyline if you want, or you can paint the selection that you don't want. So for example, if we selected that there, we hold our left mouse button down and just paint what we don't want and then trash it after that. You can adjust the size of that dot obviously by changing the amount here. So we go down to say 20 for example, you can see that dot is much smaller. So that's, I guess, for those people who like to you know, or need to, for example, paint you know, in there. Obviously we've got our delete selection, so anything that you have highlighted you can delete. And we can also undo that scan too. Sorry, not just the scan, but also what we've deleted. So if you selected an area and you've deleted it, you can undo it, and that'll bring that back out here. So just in case you've accidentally selected a piece that you realize you need. So I'm going to delete that one there. These buttons down here are the reverse selections and your select none. So I haven't ever had the need to use these. You may though, if you wish. Down here we've got add scan, we've got restart if you're not happy with the scan altogether, and then if you are happy with the scan we can wrap, but I'm not quite finished with this one yet. I want to capture the bottom side of the piece there. So what I'm going to do is take the figure off the scanning unit itself and just reverse the model so that I basically put it upside down so that I can scan the bottom side as well. I'll place that on top of the scanning unit there just so it locks in nicely. You can see what we've got down here, and we're going to click on the start scan button again. This is going to do a second scan for us, and it'll capture all of the underside areas. Any areas that it couldn't quite capture, it should be able to capture really quite nicely. Okay, so now that it's finished that bottom end of the scan, you can see what we've got there, which is really pretty cool. I'm pretty happy with that. And so what we're going to do next is we're going to click on the align button there. Now the new software is pretty good. It generally will self-align everything that we need it to, which is what it's just done there. It's figured out that you know, it has a definite bottom and a definite top there, and so it's quite easily align that up for us. Now if it didn't, for whatever reason, it's still doing its point cloud registering here, but if it didn't for whatever reason, then what we can do is come across to the cancel here if you weren't happy with the auto align. So if we cancel that, then what we've got is a scan here and a scan on this side. So we click on 2 and that'll go to this window here, or this pane here, and we've got our original scan, which we haven't got the bottom section there for. So what we can do with this in a manual scan is we can simply just zoom in here, and let's place some points on some key areas. Mark a line, and now that we've aligned that all up, we can see what we've got. We've got the bottom section there. It's aligned all of that up for us, and once it's finished doing its aligning there, we should be good to go to the next section, which, if you're happy with that, we can click on confirm. Now what we've got is a rough scan here, so that's not finished quite yet, so we can adjust things like your mesh quality. Now the default that comes out, these are all defaults that come out here, so the mesh quality is 6. I'm going to leave that where it is. I really want a good quality mesh here. I'm also going to just take that fillings denoise up a little bit more to maybe about 4, anywhere between 4 and 6 I find is pretty good. What that's going to do is it's going to denoise any of the areas here, so if you've got some some chatter around the edges, it'll get rid of those. Smoothen, you can smooth it out, you can take it all the way up to the top there. Bear in mind that the smoother you go, the bigger the file is going to be. So take it up to about, say, 25 to play around with and see if you're happy with that. You can always go back if you're not 100%, and also decimate. So you can decimate that down, to say 50% of the file size. That'll help reduce the size of the file. Once you're happy with everything there, then we can click on the wrap option, and that will register everything and then wrap it all up for us, and it should theoretically give us a really nice smooth scan. Now, depending on the settings that you used beforehand will determine how long this actually takes. If you've got really high settings and you haven't really decimated it or anything like that, then it's going to take a little bit longer. If you've decimated it a lot, then but you've got average settings, you'll find that it'll probably still take about the same amount of time. But what it's doing is it's helping reduce the file size by decimating that mesh, and it's kind of until you're used to the machine, and the software and how it works, it might be a little bit of experimentation. Obviously, it does also depend on what you're scanning too. If you're scanning gemstones, for example, then this process may not take anywhere near as long as if you're doing organic figures or jewelry and complex pieces like that. And as you can see here, the end result, if we rotate him around, is actually really pretty good. It's not too bad at all. So I'm pretty happy with that whole result there. You can zoom in there and check out and see what's going on there. Now, if you weren't happy with this, you can go through and just completely readjust these settings here. But we've also got a tool called Mesh Optimize, and when we click on that, what it will do is open up the Jewel3D Mesh It. And this is a series of tools that we can use to optimize the mesh. If you have a look here, we've got our edit tool, we've got a measuring tool as well, our mesh optimize tool, a fill tool, so if you've got any holes in here that you really want to fill up, so it's a nice solid or watertight mesh, and our deviation analysis, which is new. We have some tools over here, so select the visible one, select through, circle select, and all of our polyline and paint selects as well. We also have some components there, so that's like a Boolean operation, where if you've got another scan, for example, and you're wanting to join the two pieces together, that's going to be your component software there, or component tool. You can delete areas there. If you painted areas there, you can delete them. and we have another flip normals tools. Alright, but once you're happy with you know, the different areas here, you know, we can measure from, say, you know, that ear to you know, that ear there, and you know, it's going to give you the measurements up here, which is pretty cool. That's a nice cool feature. You know, we can go to mesh optimize, and you can delete you know, any of the spikes in the mesh itself. So if we zoom in there, you can see there's, you know, a few little spikes happening around. It's kind of a little bit bumpy. You know, you've got an area there where you can smoothen it out as well. So, you know, if we wanted to, so for example, smooth out his face a little bit more, maybe his ear, and you can reduce or increase the size of this brush as you need to. And you know, we'll see what that does for us. Yeah, so that's a much smoother in comparison to the original on this side of the face. So yeah, it's a pretty cool tool too. And then we have our decimate tool. That is going to, you know, reduce the amount of triangulations down to something that's, you know, perhaps a little bit better as far as the end mesh is concerned. So if you were to take that down to, say, you know, 50% and then hit decimate, then that will certainly help you out when it comes to you know, lowering the size of your file. Be aware though that if you decimate it too far, then, you know, you can adjust the detail in your scan. So it's a fine line between a reasonable decimation and something that takes away detail. So you can see here that the initial triangles were 1,668,334, and the current triangles are now 834,162. So that's pretty good. You know, you've taken it down, you know, by half, and that's certainly going to give you perhaps a better file to play around with. So I'm going to smooth that around. Oops, not that. Let's go here and, you know, kind of smooth that area out there, and let it do its thing. Once you're happy with that, then we can simply click on the button there and take us back to, you know, you can see that's pretty good. That gave us pretty good, some pretty good options. Alright, once you've done that there, then it's time to save the file. We're going to click on the save button there. That'll save that down there. That's number one there. That's our 3D object or our STL file. And then you can open that up into the software that you're after and continue designing if that's what you're after doing, or 3D print it. Alright, hope this video has been helpful. If you have found it helpful, then please feel free to subscribe to our channel. It really does help us out. Make sure you click on the little bell icon. That'll notify you every time we upload a file. And if you have any questions or comments, please leave them in the comments section. I've just started opening up the comments, so yeah, it'll be interesting to see if you found this helpful. I hope that helps.